The sound of a hammer striking the anvil echoes throughout the abandoned halls. In this land where darkness threatens to overtake humanity, one man sets out to supply the heroes of the land with the equipment they'll need. Andre of Astora, the renowned blacksmith, seeks to help anyone who can help themselves, forging weapons into victory, and armor to guard the precious light that dwindles in the land.
With the advent of Universes Beyond, Magic the Gathering has released cards that reflect a host of iconic, popular, and interesting franchises. In this series, we'll take a look at fan-favorite characters from different mediums and muse on what their cards may look like. In the spirit of Universes Beyond, join me today in asking the question, what if... Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and everybody in between. My name is Andre. No, my name's not Andre. My name is Kieran. Today's card and focus is around the character Andre. But my name's Kieran. Welcome back to Magic the Gathering What If, a Filthy Casuals series. This is the last episode, episode 7, the last episode of season 1 of What If. Thank you all so much if you've followed the series up until this point. It's been a lot of fun for me. You know, I love designing cards. I work on video games usually during my day job, so it's nice to take a break and do something more tactile, I guess, in Magic card designs. It's been a blast for me. I love Dark Souls. I know Colin loves Dark Souls, my co-host for this channel. It's just been fun. So thank you guys so much for watching. And let's jump into the episode. Let's not make you guys wait any longer. We're going to take a look at another mono-colored commander and see what he can forge for us today.
Even a single strike of the Anvil can spark hope.
Okay, so we are finishing off the series with a classic face in Dark Souls, Andre the Blacksmith. Now, Andre probably has the most words on his card. I feel like it's just been a graph going up. I don't know, maybe you guys at home can count how many each one has had. But again, like Artorias from the last episode, Andre is not quite as complicated as he seems. He just requires text to kind of make sure that he is clear and focused. So for 2 colorless and 2 red, you get a 3/3 legendary human artificer named Andre the Blacksmith. Andre says creatures your opponents control have Soul X, where X is half their mana value rounded down. So if you guys don't remember, Soul is a mechanic where if a creature has Soul and it gets killed or destroyed in some capacity in the combat phase, then the person whose source was the one who destroyed that creature generates X Soul tokens, which can be tapped, they're artifact tokens, which can be tapped and sacrificed to give a creature a +1/+1 counter to represent in Dark Souls, you know, cracking the souls to level up, because the more souls you have, the more you can level up. So that's kind of the soul mechanic. And what Andre says is all your creature's opponents have Soul X, where X is half their mana value. So if your opponent has a 4 mana creature, then they have Soul 2. If they have a 10 mana creature, it's Soul 5. And it kind of is an interesting mechanic because if you have 3 opponents, they're all going to have soul on their creatures, and they're going to be incentivized to kill each other's creatures as well in the combat step. So it's going to create a bit of chaos, which red loves to do, but it also is very important because you're going to want to kill your opponent's creatures and get the souls for a very specific reason. Going into his second ability, you can sacrifice a number of soul tokens equal to the number of counters on target equipment +1. So if you have an equipment on the field and it has no counters on it, then you can just sacrifice 1 soul. If you had an equipment with 3 counters on it, you could sacrifice 4 souls. So choose First Strike, Reach, Trample, Death Touch, Haste, Ward 2, Menace, Lifelink, or Vigilance. Keyword soup. Put a counter of the chosen type on the target. So basically what this represents is you're spending souls to upgrade your weapons like you would in the game. So you bring your weapon and some souls and some materials to Andre, and he'll be able to make your weapon stronger, give it new properties, that sort of thing. So that's kind of to represent that. Now you might be thinking, Kieran, you can put a lifelink counter on a sword, but that really does nothing. And you're right, but that is where his last ability comes into play. Equipment you control gain Equipped creature gains first strike if this artifact has a first strike counter on it. The same is true for other keyword ability counters. And equipped creature gets +1/+1 for each counter on this artifact. So basically what Andre does in a nutshell is make it so you can generate souls through your opponent's creatures dying in the combat phase, sacrifice those souls to put counters of ability counters onto equipment, and making it so that all your equipment gives those abilities to their equipped creature, as well as +1/+1 for each counter. And again, that's to represent in Dark Souls, you can upgrade a sword from like a +1 sword to a +2 sword to a +3 sword. That's kind of to represent that that's to represent the growth of that number as well. So even though he has a lot of text on him, he's really not that complicated. He just does some really interesting things. But what is a blacksmith without his tools, his ingenuity, and a little bit of magic? We're going to take a look at Andre's support cards, with the first one coming right up.
With the discovery of chunks in Lordran, the race to locate the legendary slabs has begun.
Okay, so the first support card is Titanite Chunk. It's a 2-mana artifact. And for those who don't know, in Dark Souls, these Titanite chunks, Titanite shards, Titanite slabs are used as material to upgrade your weapons with a blacksmith like Andre. So in this case, Titanite chunk is a 2-mana artifact that says, equipment you control have equipped creature, get +1/+1 for each counter on this artifact. So it's the exact same ability as Andre, so it gives a bit of a redundancy so that if Andre's not on the field, your equipment can still give some buff to your creatures. And it's to represent Titanite chunks' general use as a way to upgrade your weapons. Furthermore, soul tokens you control have tap, sacrifice this artifact to put a +1 counter on target equipment you control. So normally you can only sacrifice the soul counter to put a +1 counter on a creature. While the Titanite chunk's on the battlefield, you'll be able to put it on the equipment, which then will buff the equipment both through Andre's ability and the chunk's ability. And then lastly, whenever you search your library, create a soul token. That's kind of to represent the fact that in Dark Souls you go out to the world and search for things and you find treasure like this Titanite chunk, come back to upgrade your weapons. So also a little bit of redundancy to get some soul tokens, which Andre needs. The cool thing about this that makes it very strong is that if you have Andre and the Titanite chunk on the battlefield, your equipped creature is actually getting +2/+2 for every counter on them, because both that and the ability on Andre will stack, which could make for some very mean equipment on some very mean creatures.
Used as a strike weapon, but better left in the hands of its talented owner.
Okay, our second card of the day, we go back to equipment, but in a different way this time. So Blacksmith Hammer, unlike the other episodes that we've done, is not a legendary artifact equipment. In the past, we've actually done those legendary equipments that we'll be able to equip for 1 or 3. Because Blacksmith's Hammer isn't really a legendary equipment, you can kind of just get it from Andre. It's not really like it is his hammer in the game, but it's not like Artorias' greatsword, like a really special boss weapon. So Blacksmith Hammer fits the same category, but in a different way. So for 3 mana, you get an artifact equipment that can equip for 2, or equip to a legendary creature for 0, which is actually quite a nice little ability. Equipped creature gets +2/+0 and has pay X and tap the creature to search your library for a... Now this is where you guys are gonna... this is where I entreat you to jump on the drugs that I apparently have been on making these. For a common equipment card with a converted mana cost X or less, and put it onto the battlefield, then shuffle. Common isn't a thing that exists on most Magic cards. In fact, there are only 2 cards that I can think of in the entire game that have any sort of mention of rarity of the card on them. Both of them are from unglued, unhinged silver border sets. However, I think in this case, I'm going to make an exception, because it actually makes very thematic sense. Because I thought to myself, how am I going to make it so that you can forge a simple weapon, you know, or forge a simple piece of equipment, and not go for your swords of ice and fires or your hammer of Nazim, I can't remember the name. You know, these legendary equipments right away. And so I don't think it's actually that big of a stretch to think that a card could express the rarity of cards in its text box. So basically, you pay X, you search your library for a common equipment card with X or less and put on the battlefield. If this creature, being the equipped creature, is legendary, you may search for an uncommon equipment instead. So you'll be able to search for an uncommon equipment instead of a common equipment. Now, obviously, cards get rarity shifts, and so this card will be actually better in some cases, depending on what happens to different cards. But you know what? I thought it would be fun. Fits very thematically with a blacksmith's hammer, and is our second support card for Andre the Blacksmith.
Why, that's a fine ember you have there. I could smith some mighty weapons with one of those.
Okay, our third card for today is Andre's Anvil. And I'm gonna warn you, this card also is a bit strange. So for 3 mana, you get an artifact. Probably should be a legendary artifact. Maybe we'll change that later. But for today, it's an artifact. At the beginning of your end step, choose a name. Already a bit strange. Axe, battle axe, hammer, sword, blade, spear, or mace. Create a colorless equipment artifact token with the chosen name. With equipped creature gets +1/+0 and equip 1. Very simple. Basically, you choose a name. So let's say you said sword. You get a colorless equipment artifact token named sword that gives a creature +1/+0 and has equip 1. It's not that complicated, but it is very different. But the idea being, you're a blacksmith, you can create all these different types of weapons. The fun begins with its second ability. Pay 3 mana, tap it, and sacrifice an equipment token created by Andre's Anvil. That's important, and it was the only way to get this to work properly. Search your library for an equipment card that shares a word in its name with the sacrificed equipment token and put it onto the battlefield. I'm sure in the comment section you will find a way to break this, but this was the best way I could think to do it. So basically, at the beginning of your end step, you create a sword, just a basic card named sword. Then you can sacrifice that sword to go look through your library for a card that also has sword in its name and put it onto the battlefield. So in that case, you could upgrade your sword into a sword of fire and ice or a sword of light and shadow, etc. Obviously, there's tons of weapon names. We didn't do bow, we didn't do mauls, but that's because I looked through the weapons that existed in those categories, and it wasn't very impressive. So I kind of stuck with the ones that had the most potential, which are, again, axe, battle axe, hammer, sword, blade, spear, and mace. Bow would have been cool, but there's not really a lot of good bows, and then some of them actually aren't really named bow. They're like long bow or like arc bow. I'm just like, well, shit, that's not going to work. But that's Andre's Anvil, a very unique card, and I think would be a very fun card to play with.
There's reinforcement, and there's ascension.
Alright, we're getting close to the end. Our fourth card is a red card, a legendary sorcery for 1 red mana, Equipment Ascension. So in the game of Dark Souls, when you go to Andre the Blacksmith, he can actually ascend your weapon to basically upgrade it past its potential, and you get additional benefits and bonuses and all that stuff. So this is to represent that. Obviously, it's a legendary sorcery, so you can only cast if you have a legendary creature on the battlefield, which makes sense because you want to have the smith on the battlefield to be able to do it. But for 1 mana, you're going to be able to put 1 counter on target equipment of your choice, which is a little confusing to say now that I'm saying it. Basically, you're picking the counter of your choice and putting it on target equipment. Let me know down in the comment section, do you have a better way to word that? But basically, you pick one of these: indestructible, double strike, hexproof, or flying. It gains, the equipment, equipped creature gains first strike if this artifact has a first strike counter on it. The same is true for other keyword ability counters, which is the exact same phrasing and wording as Andre the Blacksmith's ability. So basically, this kind of lets you get more abilities, because Andre himself has a myriad of different abilities that you can throw onto a weapon. First strike, lifelink, death touch, menace, vigilance. But I avoided picking the obviously powerful ones. Maybe there are more powerful ones than others, but indestructible, double strike, hexproof, and in this case flying as well. So you can actually get one of these more powerful keyword abilities on your equipment. So this basically allows you to pick one of these very powerful keywords and put it on a piece of equipment and allow your creatures equipped with that creature to gain that powerful ability. For 1 mana, I think it's a pretty fair deal. But I'm curious, as always, to know what you guys think down in the comment section below. But without further ado, let's take a look at the last support card for the last commander for the last episode of Season 1 of What If.
As you've noticed, this land is flush with the mad and wicked. You won't make it through the night without employing my services.
All right, so the last card for today and for this season is Soulsmith, a 3-mana enchantment, 1 red, 2 colorless, that has a couple cool little abilities. So the first one is sacrifice an equipment. Create a number of soul tokens equal to the sacrificed equipment's mana value. So this is a way for you to kind of generate some souls to use Andre's ability more. And then the second ability is tap X and a red, sacrifice X soul tokens. Return target equipment with mana value X or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. So this is a nice way to kind of cycle through your equipment. You know, you might sacrifice an equipment and then want to bring it back, so you can do both. It's kind of flexible little enchantment, but it really lends into Andre's strategy of getting souls to use for your equipment. And if your equipment gets blown up, the ones you want, the very valuable equipment, you can actually bring them back. You can reforge them if you will. So this is actually kind of the simplest design, I think, in a lot of ways, but I really like it. I think in a lot of ways, I think it would fit in a lot of equipment decks that use red. So that is Andre's last ability, the last thing to help him gain the soul tokens he'll need to forge you a legendary artifact equipment. And that is the last support card for today. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for watching this episode of What If. We very much at Filthy Casuals hope you've enjoyed this series. And the fun, exciting part is thinking about what if we continue. So the first thing on our minds was we really want to play with these cards. Me and Colin may in the future, if there's interest, maybe do a live stream, maybe create an episode, picking a legendary creature from the series, building decks around them, and playing them. We actually would love to have some community interaction with that, in that we would love to maybe live stream the deck building process with you guys and have you jump in and give suggestions, and then face off one-on-one these 2 Dark Souls characters going mano a mano. So that's kind of where we're leaning right now in terms of where we want to bring the series next. Further than that though, even though this series hasn't really been the subscriber generation machine that maybe we thought it was going to be, you know, we have that cross synergy with IPs. We really do like this series. I really like this series, and I would love to see a season 2. So let me know in the comment section if you guys want to see season 2 of What If at some point. For those fans of the progression series, please keep in mind that we wouldn't sacrifice the progression series continuation or pace for the What If series. We would try to do them both in tandem, if nothing else. So let us know if that was the case. Would you like to see more of this? I personally would, because the next season we'll have to see a completely new IP, and that could be anything either we think of, or maybe we have a community vote and decide what IP we'll do next. And then, well, you know, we do the whole cycle again where we get 5 commanders or 6 commanders, and then maybe we add them to a larger pool and then have the Dark Souls characters fighting the Star Wars characters or whatnot. So I think that could be a lot of fun, but let me know what you guys think. And lastly, we actually really want to get these cards in your guys' hands. Now, obviously, you watch the episodes, you could probably just like get a card making program or even scribble on a piece of blank paper the designs. That's totally fair. And we highly recommend, if you want to play with these cards, to do that. None of these designs are, you know, restricted and all. Feel free to use them. But we'd really like to get these cards in your hands in an easy and accessible way, in terms of giving you guys the access to these cards to be able to play them in some other software like we use to do our progression series, just for fun between friends, or even on the tabletop if you want to, you know, print some cards out, that sort of thing. All totally free for you guys. However, we do have a handful of legendary creatures from Dark Souls that we haven't shared. We're not planning on doing episodes for them, but we kind of have them in our back pocket, the designs for those characters. And what we might do in the future is, you know, if we ever, for example, have a Patreon or something like that, maybe we will be able to just give away these 4 characters for free to our Patreons or something like that. But just let us know down in the comment section. We'll be getting like cool, flavorful, unique designs as part of the Patreon. We'd really like to get this channel to the point where it's sustainable, and this would be what if we could get this channel to make some money and support the editors and such that work on it. Let us know down in the comment section what you think about all those ideas. We have a lot of ideas in regards to What If and the progression series, and, you know, doing even other content. So I'm not going to ramble on any further. Thank you all for watching What If Season 1 Dark Souls. We here at Filthy Casuals continue to ask the question, what if these franchises existed in a Universes Beyond product? Today we're looking at Dark Souls, but in Season 2, who knows, maybe you'll be the one to decide. My name's Kieran, and thank you so much for watching. We'll see you guys in the next episode. Bye.